Hello everyone. On today's IRS tax update, we'll recap where things currently stand with those tax processing and refund delays many of you continue to experience, including the backlog of unprocessed returns and amended returns still remaining. We'll also check in on the status of those tax refunds being sent back to the IRS by tax processor TPG, and recap and explain a number of those dates and codes you may be seeing on your tax transcripts. Those still waiting on their tax refunds, you're among the 842,000 whose tax returns are still not processed as of this recording, with the majority of them, 800,000, being e-file returns and those requiring special processing, and just 42,000 paper tax returns remaining. There is no time frame on the completion. However, it is likely these returns will be processed until next tax season. Also, processing will stop on all of the returns if there is a government shutdown next month, as the IRS will take steps to furlough most employees. For those waiting on amended tax returns, that number is still at 869,000 unprocessed, with average wait times still holding around 6 to 7 months, and that could be longer, especially if the IRS needs further documentation needing to process your specific amended return. Amended return processing will also stop in the event of a government shutdown next month. Moving on to those tax refunds, as a number of taxpayers, including some of you who e-filed, had the IRS issue that refund only for you never to receive it because tax processor TPG, who works for some of the major tax processors like TurboTax, held that refund, then sent it back to the IRS to be sent out as a paper check. A number of you have been asking several questions, including how will you know when the IRS received it back? Now, the main indicator is checking your tax transcripts and locating the 720 code as seen here, indicating the tax refund was received by the IRS and returned to your tax account. At that point, if the refund was returned not flagged, you will receive a paper check usually within 4 to 6 weeks. However, if it is flagged, it could take more than 4 months for the IRS to resolve the issue. At this point, those who we've spoken with who've had their refund returned as flagged have not received that refund as of yet. A number of you have also asked, how do you know if your refund was returned as flagged? Contacting the IRS is the best method to find out, but also if your refund is higher than your wages earned, that is likely the cause for a red flag. Also, if you're claiming the fuel tax credit, that is almost automatic guarantee for further review. Some people online have stated they do not know what credits are being claimed on their own tax returns because they had someone else do their taxes. Ultimately, this is your responsibility to know what is being claimed, and if there are improper credits being claimed, the IRS will ultimately focus on you. So it's very important you're using a reliable tax preparer and knowing exactly what is being done with your tax return. Moving on to those questions about tax transcripts and all the different codes and dates that appear. Now, there are dozens and dozens of tax transcript codes, so we're going to recap some of the more common ones being reported. First thing you'll notice on your transcript is a processing date. This is when the IRS expects to have your return and refund processed, but obviously there are no guarantees. This date is typically 21 days after the date that corresponds to your cycle code, but as you can see at the example on the left, that's not always the case, and this processing date, as you may have seen, changes multiple times, especially if there are issues with your tax return. It is really a date for the IRS computer system and should not be relied upon. The cycle code tells you whether or not you were placed in the daily or weekly batch cycle. If your cycle code ends in 01, 02, 03, or 04, you've been placed in a daily batch cycle. If your cycle code ends in 05, you've been placed in a weekly batch cycle. Now, if you're in a daily batch cycle, you can expect to see tax transcript updates on Tuesdays and updates to Where's My Refund status on Wednesdays. If you're in a weekly batch cycle, you can expect to see tax transcript updates on Fridays and updates to your Where's My Refund status results on Saturdays. So if you have a cycle code ending in 05 on that weekly batch, there would be no reason to check your tax transcript daily. Code 570 additional account action pending will stop a refund from being issued until the impact of the action being taken on the account and the refund is determined and processed. Now, this could be an exam of the return is needed or documentation you will need to submit to the IRS. If you have a 570 code, there's a good chance you may receive a letter explaining any adjustments to your account. Also, if you have a 570 code on your account, your tax transcript, you will need to wait for a 571 or 572 resolved account action code to post, which will reserve the 570 code before you'll see an 846 refund issued code. There are cases the IRS can resolve an error on your tax return, and the indicator would be seeing a 570 and 971 code appear on your transcript with the same date listed next to them. Also, the 971 code represents a notice the IRS is sending you in the mail about your tax status. Now, some more common codes, none of which are a cause of concern, are the 150 code, which means your tax return was filed and is currently being processed in the IRS system. This is one code you actually want to see. The 806 code represents the taxes withheld from your income, mainly your paychecks, throughout the year from W-2 and 1099 income. The 768 code indicates you're claiming the earned income tax credit on your tax return, and the 766 code means there's an indication you might have a credit on your account, which ultimately means you may have a refund coming to you after tax processing. But also that can change, especially if the IRS rejects a claim for certain credits such as CTC or EITC, among others. The more serious code you ideally do not want to see is the 424 code, which means your tax return is set aside for further examination and to be determined if it should be audited. The 420 code confirms your tax return is under audit, and you should expect the IRS to send you a notice in the mail over the next several weeks following the date of the audit code, informing you of the situation and likely requesting documentation. Now, this is very common with EITC and CTC audits. The 810 code represents the IRS has discovered an issue with your return and has issued a refund freeze. Usually this is tied into the 420 or 424 codes that may appear and will not be resolved until the IRS conducts its review. And the 811 code means the refund freeze was released and your refund has been cleared for processing. Now again, there are more codes you may be seeing, and not all codes are bad or indicate any sort of problem. Also, another set of codes, which would be the 767 and 765 codes, which meant that the IRS removed a credit you were attempting to claim. The 765 code indicates your claim for EITC was rejected, and any refund you were due because of that was reduced or removed, which is common, especially as many claiming EITC who fall under audit never responded to those audits and documentation requests, and therefore the IRS rejected them from claiming that credit. Now, if the IRS attempts to send your direct deposit tax refund to a closed bank account, the bank will return it back to them, and the IRS will note this by showing you an 841 refund cancel code on your tax transcripts. At that point, the procedure for the IRS is to send you out a paper check to your address on file within 4 to 6 weeks of that 841 date. If your tax transcript at Where's My Refund is showing the IRS sent you out a refund, and do confirm that 846 code appears on your tax transcripts and you've not received it, whether it's been about 7 to 10 days from the direct deposit refund or at least 30 days from a paper check, then you can initiate a payment trace. You can do so by contacting the IRS or filling out this form, IRS Form 3911, and submitting it. At that point, the IRS will begin tracing to see which bank account that direct deposit refund went to and what address on file that paper check was mailed to. And once they've determined it was not in fact received and cashed, they then in turn will reissue payment accordingly. And that payment trace time could depend in reissuing of payment, usually within 4 to 6 weeks. Let us know in the comment section below about your ongoing tax situation, including what tax transcript codes you may be seeing on your tax transcripts. In the meantime, we'll keep monitoring the situation for further developments, including a possible government shutdown next month, which would essentially close the IRS as a result until things get resolved. So make sure to click on the thumbs up and subscribe button below for future updates on this channel, and thanks for watching.